Stress is killing us faster than any disease, destroying our relationships, health, and happiness every single day. But 2,000 years ago, Seneca discovered that people who never get stressed share exactly 12 unusual habits that go against everything society teaches us. This ancient Roman advisor to emperors revealed mental techniques so powerful that modern neuroscience is just now proving why they work. What you're about to learn could be the difference between a life of constant anxiety and unbreakable mental strength. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you're watching, because now I'm going to tell you everything. Imagine you're stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic. You're already running 15 minutes late for an important meeting. Your phone keeps buzzing with messages asking where you are. The air conditioning in your car just decided to quit working on the hottest day of the year. And to top it all off, the driver in front of you is scrolling through their phone instead of moving forward when there's space. Can you feel your heart rate increasing just imagining this scenario? Your muscles tensing? That familiar tightness in your chest? This is stress in action, and it's literally killing us. According to the American Psychological Association, chronic stress is linked to the 6 leading causes of death: heart disease, cancer, lung ailments, accidents, cirrhosis of the liver, and suicide. What's worse, 77% of people regularly experience physical symptoms caused by stress. But here's what's fascinating. Some people would sit in that exact same traffic situation and feel completely at peace. Not because they enjoy being late or love sitting in hot cars, but because they've mastered the first and most fundamental habit of people who never get stressed. They instinctively distinguish between what they can control and what they can't. This habit, what I call the dichotomy of control, is the foundation upon which all stress-free living is built. And it was first articulated by a man who had far more reason to be stressed than any of us. Epictetus was born into slavery in ancient Rome. He suffered a permanent disability when his master broke his leg in a fit of anger. He had no freedom, no rights, and little hope for a better future. Yet in his writings we find extraordinary mental clarity and emotional resilience. How was this possible? His secret was captured in the opening lines of his handbook, the Enchiridion. Some things are within our power, while others are not. Within our power are our opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, property, reputation, office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. This simple distinction, what I can control versus what I can't, became the cornerstone of Stoic philosophy and remains the most powerful tool for eliminating unnecessary stress in our lives. Now let's apply this to our traffic scenario. What aspects can you control in that situation? You can control your breathing, your thoughts about the situation, how you communicate with people waiting for you, and how you use the unexpected time, perhaps to mentally prepare for the meeting. What can't you control? The traffic itself, the broken air conditioning, other drivers' behavior, or the fact that the meeting was scheduled at a specific time. Most people make the critical mistake of focusing their mental and emotional energy on the uncontrollable factors. They rage against the traffic, curse the car manufacturer, mentally assault the distracted driver ahead, and catastrophize about the consequences of being late. All of this produces stress chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline, which damage your body while doing absolutely nothing to improve the situation. People who never get stressed make a different choice. They immediately perform what I call the dichotomy shift, mentally sorting every aspect of a challenging situation into 2 categories: what they can influence and what they can't. Then they focus exclusively on what they can control. This isn't just philosophical theory. It creates an immediate neurological shift. Research from the University of California shows that this simple mental sorting reduces cortisol production by up to 23% during stressful events. That's comparable to some anti-anxiety medications, but without any side effects. Let me show you how Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, applied this principle during situations far more stressful than anything we face. As emperor, he dealt with a devastating plague that killed millions, led armies against constant invasions, and navigated complex political conspiracies that threatened his life. In his private journal, which we now call Meditations, he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And again, external things are not the problem. It's your assessment of them, which you can erase right now. Marcus wasn't denying reality or pretending that challenges didn't exist. He was focusing his attention and energy precisely where it could make a difference, on his own perceptions and responses. Now let's make this practical for your life with a simple exercise. Think about something that's causing you stress right now. Perhaps it's a difficult relationship, a work deadline, or a financial concern. Take a moment, right now as you're watching this video, and mentally divide that situation into 2 columns. In the first column, list everything about the situation that you have direct control over. In the second column, list what you don't control. Be ruthlessly honest with yourself. For example, if you're stressed about a work project, you control your effort, time management, and communication. But you don't control your colleagues' contributions, unexpected technical issues, or how your boss will ultimately perceive the result. Do you notice how clarifying this is? Most of our stress comes from mentally wrestling with things in the second column, all the factors we can't control. When you clearly define what you can influence and focus exclusively there, you immediately feel a sense of empowerment rather than helplessness. One executive I worked with was completely overwhelmed by her company's restructuring. She couldn't sleep, her blood pressure was rising, and she was considering resigning. When I guided her through this dichotomy exercise, she realized that of the 21 factors causing her stress, she could only directly influence 5. By focusing exclusively on those 5 areas, her anxiety reduced by 70% in just 3 days, and she successfully navigated the restructuring process. But at this point, you might be thinking, this sounds nice in theory, but my situation is different. The stakes are really high, and I have good reason to be stressed. That's exactly what Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, would have said was the most dangerous trap: the belief that our circumstances are uniquely difficult. Seneca was forced to commit suicide by Emperor Nero, so he understood high-stakes situations. Yet he wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," recognizing that much of our stress comes not from events themselves, but from our judgments about those events. Let's apply the dichotomy of control to relationships, where many of us experience significant stress. Imagine someone criticizes you harshly in front of colleagues. Most people immediately stress about factors they can't control: what that person thinks of them, what colleagues now believe, or whether this will affect their reputation. Someone practicing the dichotomy shift immediately identifies what they can control, how they respond to the criticism, whether they extract anything useful from it, how they carry themselves afterward, and what they focus on next. This mental sorting doesn't make the criticism feel good, but it prevents it from creating lingering stress that affects their well-being and productivity. The most powerful way to implement this habit is through the 2-column technique. Whenever you feel stress building, physically draw a line down the middle of a piece of paper. On the left, list everything about the situation you can control. On the right, list what you can't. Then make a conscious decision to focus exclusively on the left column. This isn't just an intellectual exercise. It's rewiring your brain's automatic response to potential stressors. The physical act of writing creates stronger neural connections than just thinking about it. One manager I worked with reduced her anxiety by 70% in just 3 days using this technique during a company restructuring that threatened her department. What makes this approach so different from traditional stress management is that it's preventative rather than reactive. Most techniques try to manage stress after it's already taken hold. The dichotomy of control prevents stress from arising in the first place by changing how you process potentially stressful events. Remember, this doesn't mean becoming passive about things you can't directly control. It means recognizing that your influence on those things comes through how you handle what you can control. As Stephen Covey beautifully explained it, we all have a circle of concern, all the things that matter to us, and a circle of influence, what we can actually affect. Stress drops dramatically when we focus our energy on our circle of influence. I challenge you to try the 2-column technique today with whatever is causing you the most stress. Don't just think about it. Actually write it down. The clarity this provides is immediate and often surprising. People frequently discover they've been spending 90% of their mental energy on things they can't influence while neglecting the areas where they actually have power. With consistent practice, this mental sorting becomes automatic. When a potentially stressful situation arises, your brain will naturally distinguish between what you control and what you don't, redirecting your energy toward productive action rather than draining it through worry and frustration. The fundamental shift is realizing that the problem is not the problem, your reaction to the problem is the problem. Or as Epictetus put it, people are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. This single principle, the dichotomy of control, is powerful enough to transform your relationship with stress. But distinguishing what you control is just the first step. The next habit is even more powerful. It's something the Stoics did every morning before facing the day. This 4-minute practice literally programs your brain to remain calm throughout the day, even when everything seems to be falling apart around you. But distinguishing what you control is just the first step. The next habit is even more powerful. It's something the Stoics did every morning before facing the day. This 4-minute practice literally programs your brain to remain calm throughout the day, even when everything seems to be falling apart around you. Think about how professional athletes prepare for big games. They don't just show up and hope for the best. They mentally rehearse challenging scenarios before they happen. They visualize making difficult shots under pressure. They imagine how they'll respond if they fall behind. This mental preparation is why they can perform under pressure while others crumble. The Stoics understood this psychological principle 2,000 years ago. They called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It's the second habit of people who never get stressed. They mentally rehearse challenges before facing them. This might sound counterintuitive. Won't thinking about problems make you more anxious? Actually, the opposite is true. Brief, structured visualization of potential difficulties immunizes you against stress when those difficulties actually arise. Seneca, who served as advisor to Emperor Nero, one of history's most volatile leaders, wrote, "We should project our thoughts ahead of us at every turn and have in mind every possible eventuality instead of only the usual course of events. The soul should be prepared in advance for all things." Seneca wasn't suggesting we become pessimists, constantly expecting disaster. He was teaching a technique for psychological preparation, what modern psychologists now call stress inoculation training. Here's how Marcus Aurelius practiced this habit. In his private journal, he wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, 'The people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly.'" Again, this wasn't pessimism, it was preparation. By acknowledging that he might encounter difficult people, Marcus was programming his mind to respond with patience rather than surprise and frustration. Let me guide you through how to practice this 4-minute morning ritual. First, find a quiet moment shortly after waking before checking your phone or email. Take 3 deep breaths to center yourself. Second, ask yourself, what challenging situations might I face today? Perhaps you have a difficult conversation scheduled, a tight deadline, or a meeting with someone who often triggers your stress response. Identify 1 to 3 potential challenges. Third, and this is the crucial part, visualize yourself facing these challenges with calm, centered presence. See yourself responding rather than reacting. Imagine maintaining your composure, speaking clearly, and acting in alignment with your values. Fourth, remind yourself, I can handle whatever comes my way today. I choose how I respond to each situation. That's it. 4 minutes that can transform your entire day. One executive I worked with reduced his workplace anxiety by 60% in just 2 weeks by implementing this morning practice. When difficult situations arose, they felt familiar rather than shocking, and his pre-programmed calm responses kicked in automatically. The critical difference between this practice and worrying is intention, duration, and conclusion. Worrying is unfocused, open-ended, and leaves you feeling worse. The Stoic morning rehearsal is focused, time-limited, and concludes with confidence in your ability to handle challenges. This technique works because your brain doesn't strongly distinguish between vivid imagination and actual experience. When you mentally rehearse handling a difficult situation calmly, you're literally creating neural pathways that your brain will follow when the real situation occurs. It's like installing software updates before you need them, rather than crashing when challenges arise. Let's apply this to specific modern situations. Imagine you have a performance review coming up with your manager. Most people worry vaguely about it, creating stress without preparation. Someone practicing the Stoic morning rehearsal would specifically visualize, my manager might point out that project that fell behind schedule. I'll breathe, acknowledge the feedback, and explain the steps I've taken to prevent similar issues in the future. I won't get defensive or make excuses. I'll focus on solutions and growth. Or perhaps you're nervous about a difficult conversation with your partner. Instead of anxious rumination, you'd visualize, they might become emotional when I bring up this issue. I'll stay calm, listen fully before responding, and focus on understanding their perspective even if I disagree. I'll speak from I statements rather than accusations. The key is specificity. Vague worries create anxiety. Specific preparation creates confidence. What makes this technique so powerful is that it doesn't just help with anticipated challenges. It creates a general response pattern that helps with unexpected difficulties too. When you regularly practice mentally responding with calm clarity, it becomes your default setting in all situations. Modern neuroscience confirms what the Stoics intuited. Brain scans show that people trained in techniques like the morning mental rehearsal process potentially stressful events through different neural pathways than untrained individuals. They literally experience the same external events differently at a neurological level. A Harvard study found that participants who practiced stress inoculation techniques similar to the Stoic morning rehearsal showed a 23% lower cortisol response when facing stressful situations compared to control groups. Their amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, showed decreased activity, while their prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thinking, maintained higher function. Some people mistakenly think this practice will make them anxious or attract negative events. The research shows the opposite. Brief, controlled exposure to potential stressors in your imagination reduces anxiety about those stressors and improves performance when facing them. Think of it as a mental vaccine. A vaccine contains a small, controlled dose of a pathogen that triggers your immune system to develop protection. Similarly, the morning mental rehearsal exposes you to a small, controlled dose of potential stresses, allowing your mind to develop psychological protection. Now, let's enhance this practice by incorporating a powerful variation the Stoics also used: evening reflection. At the end of each day, take 3 minutes to review how you responded to challenges. Ask yourself, what went well today? Where did I maintain composure under pressure? Where did I get triggered or react rather than respond? What would a wiser response have looked like? How will I handle similar situations better tomorrow? This reflection creates a continuous improvement cycle. You're not judging yourself harshly, but learning and programming better responses for the future. One client who implemented this evening practice told me, "For years, I beat myself up over mistakes. This reflection technique helped me transform self-criticism into constructive learning. Now I see challenges as opportunities to practice rather than tests I might fail." The combination of morning rehearsal and evening reflection creates a powerful system for developing what psychologists call stress resilience, the ability to face increasing challenges while maintaining mental clarity and emotional balance. You can also adapt this practice for specific high-pressure events. Before an important presentation, job interview, or difficult conversation, take 5 minutes to visualize potential challenges and your ideal responses. Athletes call this mental mapping, creating a blueprint for performance that your brain will naturally follow. One participant in my workshop was terrified of public speaking. Before a critical presentation, he spent 15 minutes visualizing everything that could go wrong. Technology failures, difficult questions, losing his train of thought, and mentally rehearsing calm, effective responses to each scenario. When several of these challenges actually occurred during his presentation, he handled them with surprising ease. Afterwards, he said, "It felt like I'd already been through this exact situation. I knew exactly what to do." This illustrates an important point. The goal isn't to eliminate challenges or prevent difficult situations. The goal is to develop your capacity to handle whatever arises with equanimity, exactly what the Stoics taught. Let me address a common misunderstanding about this practice. Some people think the Stoics were teaching pessimism or expecting the worst. That's not accurate. The Stoics were pragmatic realists. They understood that difficulties are part of life, and psychological preparation creates freedom from anxiety. As Seneca wrote, "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." This isn't pessimism, it's practical wisdom. You might be wondering how this practice differs from the law of attraction or positive thinking approaches. The key difference is that positive visualization focuses exclusively on desired outcomes, which are largely outside your control, while Stoic preparation focuses on your responses, which are entirely within your control. The Stoic approach aligns perfectly with the dichotomy of control we discussed earlier. Let's make this concrete with a 7-day challenge. For the next week, spend 4 minutes each morning practicing the mental rehearsal technique. Start with 1 potential challenge, then gradually expand to 3. Notice how your response to real challenges begins to shift. Many people report feeling a new sense of calm confidence after just 3 days of consistent practice. What's powerful about this habit is how it compounds over time. Each mental rehearsal strengthens your neural pathways for responding rather than reacting. After several weeks, what once triggered immediate stress now triggers thoughtful response. After several months, your default setting in all situations becomes calm, centered presence. One healthcare professional told me, "After practicing this technique for 30 days, I noticed I was the only one who stayed calm during a major crisis at the hospital. My colleagues asked what my secret was. I simply told them I'd already faced this exact scenario in my mind." Remember that this practice doesn't prevent you from taking action or solving problems. In fact, it enhances your problem-solving abilities by keeping your prefrontal cortex, your brain's executive center, online instead of being hijacked by stress responses. You think more clearly, communicate more effectively, and make better decisions. The Stoics understood something profound that modern neuroscience confirms. Your brain will follow the paths you create for it. With regular practice of morning mental rehearsal, you're literally rewiring your neural circuitry to process potentially stressful events through pathways of calm response rather than reactive stress. Start tomorrow morning. Before checking your phone, spend 4 minutes visualizing one difficult situation you might face. See yourself responding with calm clarity rather than reactive stress. Notice how this affects your experience throughout the day. This mental rehearsal transforms how you respond to challenges, but to completely change your relationship with obstacles, you need the third habit of unstressed people. It's a technique Marcus Aurelius used that instantly transforms any problem into an opportunity for growth. A concept some call the Stoic reversal that works even in the most challenging circumstances. When life throws you an unexpected curveball, most people immediately see it as a problem to be feared. But those who never get stressed, those who maintain their calm even in chaos, have mastered something remarkable. They've trained themselves to see obstacles differently. This mental shift doesn't just reduce stress. It eliminates it entirely by transforming how you perceive challenges at the most fundamental level. Marcus Aurelius captured this principle perfectly when he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This isn't just philosophical wordplay, it's a practical mental technique that transforms your relationship with every challenge you face. I call this the obstacle reversal, and it's the third habit of people who never get stressed. While the dichotomy of control helps you focus on what you can influence, and morning mental rehearsal prepares you for challenges, obstacle reversal transforms how you see those challenges when they actually arrive. Let me illustrate this with a simple example. Imagine you've been preparing for weeks to give an important presentation, and 15 minutes before you're scheduled to begin, your computer crashes. All your slides are inaccessible. Most people would immediately feel panic rising. Their heart rate increases, their thoughts race, and stress chemicals flood their system. But someone practicing obstacle reversal would think differently. Instead of seeing a disaster, they'd immediately ask, how is this obstacle actually showing me a better way forward? What opportunity does this present? Perhaps this forces them to engage more directly with the audience instead of hiding behind slides. Perhaps it demonstrates their ability to think on their feet, a valuable skill their colleagues and supervisors will notice. Perhaps it reveals a vulnerability in their preparation process they can strengthen for the future. The difference isn't in the situation, it's in how the mind processes the situation. One perspective creates stress, the other creates opportunity. This isn't positive thinking or wishful optimism. The Stoics were ruthless realists. They didn't deny problems existed. They simply trained themselves to see problems as opportunities for growth, strength, and distinction. Think about the remarkable origin story of Stoicism itself. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, was a wealthy merchant who lost everything when his ship sank in a storm. Most people would be devastated by such catastrophic financial loss. But when Zeno found himself stranded in Athens with nothing, he wandered into a bookshop and discovered philosophy. That shipwreck, which seemed like the worst possible disaster, led directly to the creation of a philosophy that has helped millions of people for over 2,000 years. This illustrates a profound truth. Sometimes what appears to be our worst moment contains the seed of our greatest contribution. Let me teach you the practical 3-step process for mastering obstacle reversal. Step 1. When facing any challenge, pause and consciously name the obstacle. My computer has crashed before my presentation. Simply naming it creates mental space between you and the problem. Step 2. Ask the reversal question. How might this obstacle be showing me a better way forward? Be genuinely curious. Don't force an answer. Allow your mind to explore possibilities. Step 3. Identify one specific action this new perspective makes possible. Since I can't use slides, I'll create a more interactive experience by asking the audience questions and facilitating discussion. Try this right now with something that's currently challenging you. What's one obstacle you're facing? Pause the video if you need to think. Now ask yourself, how might this obstacle actually be pointing me toward a better way? What opportunities does it contain that wouldn't exist otherwise? I know this can feel challenging at first. When we're in the grip of stress, seeing opportunity in obstacles seems impossible. But with practice, this mental reversal becomes automatic, a reflexive way of processing challenges that prevents stress before it can take hold. There are 5 specific questions that transform any obstacle into opportunity. When facing a challenge, ask: 1. What strength might this obstacle be here to develop in me? 2. What would I advise someone I love if they faced this same situation? 3. How might I use this challenge to demonstrate my values? 4. What part of this situation might I someday be grateful for? 5. If this obstacle were sent specifically to help me grow, what would the lesson be? These questions activate your prefrontal cortex, the rational, problem-solving part of your brain, which naturally suppresses your amygdala, the fear center that triggers stress responses. Neuroscience shows that asking these types of questions literally changes which neural networks process the situation. Epictetus, who experienced slavery and disability, taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters." He wasn't offering empty philosophical comfort. He was sharing a tested method for transforming adversity into advantage. Let's apply this to rejection, something we all face. Perhaps you applied for a job or promotion and were turned down. Most people immediately generate stress by thinking, "I'm not good enough. I've wasted my time. This is embarrassing." Someone practicing obstacle reversal thinks, "This rejection is clarifying my path. Perhaps this role wouldn't have aligned with my strengths. Now I can focus on opportunities that better match my unique abilities." The feedback from this process shows me specific areas to develop. This isn't denying disappointment. It's channeling that energy into productive direction rather than circular stress. Modern business leaders often use this same principle without realizing its ancient origins. When Airbnb was struggling during its early days, the founders discovered customers were booking rooms but not paying. Instead of seeing this as a fatal problem, they asked what opportunity this obstacle revealed. They realized users didn't trust the platform, which led them to implement trust features that became central to their success. Similarly, when facing personal setbacks, the obstacle reversal transforms how you experience them. A relationship ending, a financial setback, or a health challenge. Each contains hidden opportunities for growth that remain invisible until you specifically look for them. The Stoics had a particular practice called productive failure that builds on this principle. When you experience failure, whether in work, relationships, or personal goals, ask these specific questions. What does this failure reveal about my assumptions that I couldn't have learned otherwise? What skills or perspectives am I now forced to develop that will serve me in the future? How has this failure actually narrowed my focus to what truly matters? I recently worked with someone who was devastated after being laid off from a position they'd held for 12 years. Using the obstacle reversal, they realized this forced transition was actually an opportunity to pursue entrepreneurial ideas they'd been postponing for years. 6 months later, they had launched a successful consulting practice that provided both greater income and more flexibility than their previous job. What initially appeared as disaster became the catalyst for positive transformation. Now, I want to challenge you to practice obstacle reversal daily for the next 7 days. Each day, identify one problem or challenge you're facing. Apply the three-step process. Name the obstacle, ask how it might be showing you a better way forward, and identify one specific action this new perspective makes possible. At first, you might need to consciously work through these steps, but with consistent practice, your brain literally rewires itself. The neural pathways for seeing opportunities in obstacles grow stronger, while the pathways for stress responses weaken from disuse. This isn't just psychological theory, it's neuroplasticity in action. A study published in the Journal of Cognitive Neuroscience found that people trained in reappraisal techniques similar to obstacle reversal showed measurable changes in brain activity after just 2 weeks. The amygdala, fear center, became less reactive to challenges, while the prefrontal cortex, reasoning center, showed increased activity. It's important to distinguish this approach from naive optimism. The Stoics weren't suggesting we ignore problems or pretend everything is perfect. They advocated clear-eyed realism coupled with strategic perspective. They understood that obstacles are inevitable, but suffering from them is optional. As Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." He recognized that obstacles aren't just challenges to overcome. They're the very means by which we develop our greatest strengths. This relates directly to the dichotomy of control we discussed earlier. When facing obstacles, most people waste energy wishing the obstacle didn't exist, something they can't control. Those practicing obstacle reversal immediately focus on what they can control, their perspective and response. Let me share a powerful real-world example. A client who managed a team of 50 people was devastated when budget cuts forced him to reorganize, eliminating several positions. Most people would be stressed about delivering this difficult news and managing the aftermath. Using obstacle reversal, he asked, "How might this challenge actually strengthen our team in ways that wouldn't happen otherwise?" This perspective shift led him to involve the entire team in brainstorming efficiency improvements. Not only did they find ways to streamline operations that actually improved results with fewer resources, but team cohesion strengthened through collaborative problem-solving. A situation that could have created months of stress became a catalyst for innovation. The same principle applies to personal challenges. Another person I worked with was diagnosed with a health condition requiring significant lifestyle changes. Rather than seeing this as purely negative, she asked what opportunities this obstacle presented. She discovered that the required changes improved not just the specific condition, but her overall well-being in ways she wouldn't have experienced otherwise. Remember that adopting this perspective doesn't mean you won't feel initial disappointment, frustration, or concern when facing obstacles. The Stoics weren't emotionless. They were emotionally intelligent. They acknowledged natural reactions, but didn't allow those reactions to determine their response. To integrate obstacle reversal with the previous habits we've discussed, try this sequence when facing challenges. First, apply the dichotomy of control to focus only on what you can influence. Second, use your morning mental rehearsal to prepare for obstacles before they arise. Third, when obstacles appear, practice obstacle reversal to transform them into opportunities. This three-part approach creates a comprehensive system for preventing stress before it can take hold. You're not just managing stress, you're eliminating it at the source by transforming how your brain processes potentially stressful events. What makes this approach particularly powerful is that it develops what psychologists now call anti-fragility, the quality of actually becoming stronger under stress rather than merely resisting it. Most stress management techniques aim for resilience, bouncing back after challenges. Obstacle reversal creates anti-fragility, becoming better because of challenges. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. This isn't just beautiful philosophy. It's a practical mental technique that transforms your relationship with every challenge you face. Begin practicing obstacle reversal today with whatever challenges you're currently facing. Remember the 3 steps. Name the obstacle, ask how it might be showing you a better way forward, and identify one specific action this new perspective makes possible. With practice, this mental shift becomes automatic, a habitual way of seeing obstacles not as sources of stress, but as opportunities for growth, strength, and distinction. You'll discover that the very obstacles that once created stress now generate excitement about the growth they make possible. This mindset of transforming obstacles is powerful, but to maintain it consistently, you need the 4th habit that the Stoics practice daily. Something that seems so simple that most people don't believe in its power until they experience it. It's about 3 words that you say to yourself that literally deactivate the stress switch in your brain. This mindset of transforming obstacles is powerful, but to maintain it consistently, you need the 4th habit that the Stoics practice daily. Something that seems so simple that most people don't believe in its power until they experience it. It's about 3 words that you say to yourself that literally deactivate the stress switch in your brain. These 3 words are, "This is happening." I know it sounds almost too simple, but this practice of active acceptance is perhaps the most misunderstood yet transformative habit of people who never get stressed. When you find yourself in a situation you can't immediately change, these 3 words create an immediate shift from resistance to response. Have you noticed how much we struggle against reality? Think about the last time you were stuck in traffic, caught in the rain without an umbrella, or dealing with a delayed flight. Most people immediately create stress by fighting against what's already happening. They think, "This shouldn't be happening. This isn't fair. This is ruining everything." This resistance doesn't change the situation. It only adds a layer of emotional suffering on top of it. As the Stoics understood, fighting against immutable reality is like arguing with gravity. You'll never win, and you'll exhaust yourself in the process. Epictetus captured this perfectly when he wrote, "Do not seek for things to happen as you wish, but wish for things to happen as they do happen, and you will go on well." This wasn't passive resignation. It was the first step toward effective action. Let me be clear about what active acceptance is not. It's not giving up. It's not approving of bad situations. It's not becoming a doormat. It's simply acknowledging reality as it is before deciding how to respond. It's the difference between swimming against a current, exhausting and futile, and recognizing the current exists so you can swim strategically. The power of active acceptance comes from the way it short-circuits your brain's stress response. When you resist reality, your sympathetic nervous system activates, triggering a cascade of stress hormones. When you practice acceptance with those 3 simple words, "This is happening," you activate your parasympathetic nervous system instead, creating a state of calm clarity from which effective action can emerge. Let me teach you how to implement the 6-second pause that makes this practice work in real time. The next time you feel stress rising in response to something you can't immediately change, try this. First, pause and take 1 deep breath. Second, say to yourself, "This is happening." Third, feel your feet on the ground, creating physical grounding. Fourth, ask, "Given that this is happening, what's the most effective response?" This entire process takes just 6 seconds, but it completely transforms your relationship with the situation. Instead of wasting energy fighting reality, you're channeling that energy into strategic response. A healthcare professional I worked with described how this practice transformed her experience during a particularly chaotic shift in the emergency room. Multiple critical patients arrived simultaneously, essential equipment malfunctioned, and several staff members called in sick. In the past, she would have felt overwhelmed by stress, thinking, "This shouldn't be happening. We're not prepared for this." Instead, she paused for 6 seconds and thought, "This is happening. What's my most effective response?" That simple shift allowed her to maintain clarity while prioritizing patience and directing available resources. Her team later commented on her remarkable composure during a situation that would have rattled most people. What's fascinating is that acceptance doesn't lead to passivity. It leads to more effective action. When you stop wasting mental energy fighting against reality, you have more resources available for actually improving the situation. Think about the last argument or disagreement you had. Most likely, both people were resisting what was happening, each thinking, "This person shouldn't be saying this. They shouldn't think this way." That resistance creates immediate stress and prevents productive communication. Imagine instead if you had paused and thought, "This disagreement is happening. This person genuinely sees things differently than I do." That acceptance doesn't mean you agree with them. It simply acknowledges the reality of the situation, creating space for understanding and resolution rather than escalation. The Stoics practiced this through a specific sequence they called accept, evaluate, act. First, they would fully accept the situation as it was. Then, they would evaluate their options based on that reality. Finally, they would take decisive action from a place of clarity rather than resistance. You can implement this today by identifying your personal resistance triggers, situations that tend to make you fight against reality. Common examples include unexpected changes to plans, criticism from others, technology failures, or traffic delays. The next time one of these triggers occurs, consciously practice those 3 words. This is happening. One executive I coached realized that unexpected schedule changes were his biggest resistance trigger. When meetings ran long or new priorities emerged, he would create immense stress by thinking, "This is disrupting my careful planning. I can't get everything done now." After practicing active acceptance for just 2 weeks, his response transformed. When schedules changed, he would think, "This is happening. How do I need to adjust my priorities now?" His stress levels dropped dramatically, and ironically, his productivity improved. Let's look at the scientific evidence for this practice. Research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that acceptance reduces both the intensity and duration of negative emotions during stressful events. More remarkably, studies from the field of psychoneuroimmunology show that acceptance practices reduce inflammatory markers and oxidative stress in the body, the same biological factors linked to chronic disease. You might be wondering how this differs from mindfulness or meditation. While there's certainly overlap, active acceptance is specifically designed for real-time application in stressful situations. You don't need to stop what you're doing or find a quiet place. You simply acknowledge reality in the midst of activity. The true power of this practice becomes evident when facing major life challenges. When dealing with serious illness, financial setbacks, or relationship difficulties, active acceptance doesn't eliminate the situation's difficulty, but it prevents the additional suffering that comes from resistance. A person I worked with was facing a serious health diagnosis. Initially, she created enormous additional suffering through thoughts like, "This isn't fair. I did everything right. This shouldn't be happening to me." These thoughts didn't change her diagnosis. They only intensified her suffering. When she began practicing active acceptance, saying, "This is happening," each time she felt resistance rising, something remarkable occurred. She found herself able to be fully present with her medical team, ask important questions, and make clear decisions about treatment. The diagnosis hadn't changed, but her relationship with it transformed completely. To be clear, active acceptance doesn't mean we passively accept injustice or situations we can change. Remember the dichotomy of control from earlier? We're accepting the current reality as it exists in this moment, while still working to influence what we can going forward. When facing societal problems, institutional failures, or personal injustices, we can simultaneously accept this is currently happening, while working diligently to create change. In fact, acceptance creates the clear-headed focus necessary for effective action, rather than reactive outrage. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated this balance perfectly. As emperor, he faced constant challenges requiring response, yet he wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." He wasn't advocating passivity. He was recognizing that acceptance is the foundation for effective engagement. Let's integrate this habit with the ones we've already discussed. When facing a challenging situation, first, apply the dichotomy of control to focus only on what you can influence. Second, remember your morning mental rehearsal and how you prepared for challenges. Third, practice obstacle reversal to find opportunity in the difficulty. Fourth, use active acceptance, this is happening, to eliminate resistance. This integrated approach creates an unshakable foundation for responding to life's challenges without stress. You're not denying difficulties, you're transforming your relationship with them. I encourage you to start with small daily irritations, the perfect training ground for this practice. The next time you're caught in traffic, the internet goes down, or someone cancels plans, consciously practice saying, "This is happening." Notice how this small shift creates immediate relief from the stress of resistance. Then gradually apply this to larger challenges. You'll discover that the same principle works regardless of the situation's magnitude. Whether facing a minor inconvenience or a major life challenge, acceptance is always the first step toward effective response. One powerful way to reinforce this habit is by creating acceptance anchors throughout your day. Specific moments when you practice acceptance, even when nothing stressful is happening. For example, each time you wash your hands, silently say, "This moment is exactly as it is." This creates neural pathways for acceptance that are ready when you need them during challenging situations. A woman I worked with transformed her relationship with her teenager by practicing this habit. Previously, their interactions were filled with resistance. "He shouldn't speak to me that way. He should be more responsible." This resistance created constant stress and conflict. When she began practicing active acceptance, "This is his current behavior," something remarkable happened. Instead of reacting emotionally, she could respond thoughtfully. Their relationship gradually transformed as her acceptance created space for understanding rather than judgment. The Stoics understood something profound that modern psychology confirms. Acceptance is not weakness, it's the foundation of true strength. By accepting what is, we free ourselves from the exhausting struggle against reality and direct our energy toward what can actually be changed. As Epictetus wrote, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." This perfectly captures the balance between acceptance and action that characterizes people who never get stressed. Begin practicing today with those 3 simple words. This is happening. Notice how they immediately transform your experience of challenging situations. With consistent practice, this acceptance becomes your automatic first response, preventing stress before it can take hold. Now that you understand how to accept the present moment, you need the 5th habit that transforms how you see your future. It's a practice that seems counterintuitive, but creates immediate relief from worry about what might happen next. The Stoics called it negative visualization, and it's the most misunderstood yet powerful technique for eliminating anxiety about what's to come. Now that you understand how to accept the present moment, you need the 5th habit that transforms how you see your future. It's a practice that seems counterintuitive, but creates immediate relief from worry about what might happen next. The Stoics called it negative visualization, And it's the most misunderstood yet powerful technique for eliminating anxiety about what's to come. At first glance, this practice sounds completely backward. We're often told to visualize success, imagine best-case scenarios, and focus on positive outcomes. But the Stoics discovered something profound. Deliberately imagining losing what you value most creates an immediate and powerful appreciation for what you already have. Seneca, who served as advisor to Emperor Nero and experienced both extreme wealth and exile, practiced this regularly. He wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" He would deliberately practice living as if he had lost his wealth, not out of pessimism, but as psychological training. This practice, called premeditatio malorum in Latin, works because it exploits a quirk in human psychology. We quickly adapt to the good things in our lives and stop appreciating them. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. By temporarily imagining their absence, we reawaken our appreciation and simultaneously reduce our fear of losing them. Let me guide you through a simple 5-minute negative visualization exercise that you can try right now. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine waking up tomorrow without something you currently take for granted. Perhaps your health, your home, or a relationship that matters to you. Don't just think about it intellectually. Really feel what that would be like. How would your daily routine change? What would you miss most? Now open your eyes and notice what you feel. Most people experience an immediate sense of gratitude and presence. The things you visualized losing suddenly seem more precious. This isn't depressing, it's transformative. You're experiencing exactly what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." The power of this practice lies in what psychologists call the contrast effect. By briefly considering the absence of something, its presence becomes more vivid and appreciated. It's like how food tastes better when you're hungry, or how a warm house feels more comfortable after you've been out in the cold. This isn't just philosophical theory. Modern research confirms its effectiveness. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who regularly practiced negative visualization reported significantly higher levels of happiness and lower anxiety about future events than those in control groups. The practice created what researchers called a gratitude rebound effect, temporary consideration of loss followed by enhanced appreciation. The key to practicing this effectively is intention and duration. You're not wallowing in fears or worrying about what might go wrong. You're briefly, intentionally considering loss for the specific purpose of enhancing appreciation and reducing attachment-based anxiety. Typically, just 2 to 3 minutes of focused negative visualization creates the beneficial effect without tipping into unproductive rumination. There are specific moments throughout your day when this practice is particularly powerful. Before important meetings, try briefly imagining the meeting being cancelled. You'll approach it with greater presence and appreciation when it occurs. Before seeing someone you care about, imagine not having them in your life. Your interaction will be more meaningful and less taken for granted. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, writing, "Remember that you are an actor in a play, of such a kind as the author pleases to make it. For this is your duty, to act well the part that is given to you, but to select the part belongs to another." He reminded himself that everything, his position as emperor, his family, even his own life, was temporary, on loan from the universe. Some people worry that this practice will make them pessimistic or attract negative outcomes. The research shows the opposite. Brief, intentional negative visualization actually reduces anxiety by desensitizing you to fears and increasing your confidence in your ability to handle challenges. It's like a mental vaccine, a small, controlled dose that builds immunity. One particularly powerful application is what the Stoics called the last time meditation. Consider that every activity you perform, having breakfast with your family, walking through your neighborhood, having a conversation with a friend, will at some point be done for the last time. Not to be morbid, but to fully appreciate the ordinary moments that make up your life. Try this exercise. The next time you're engaged in a routine activity you normally take for granted, think to yourself, I am doing this as if it were the last time I might ever do it. Notice how this transforms even mundane experiences into precious ones. A simple meal becomes a feast. A routine conversation becomes meaningful. This practice also transforms how you approach relationships. Most of us take the people in our lives for granted until they're gone. By occasionally visualizing what life would be like without important people, you experience immediate gratitude and presence when you're with them. You become less likely to waste time on petty arguments and more likely to express appreciation. Let me share how one person transformed their anxiety through this practice. They were constantly worried about losing their job, creating significant stress that actually undermined their performance. I suggested they spend 5 minutes visualizing exactly what would happen if they did lose their job, where they would live, how they would pay bills, what steps they would take next. Surprisingly, this didn't increase their anxiety. It dramatically reduced it. By facing their specific fears rather than avoiding them, they realized they had more resources and options than they'd thought. They also gained clarity about what really mattered to them professionally. Their work performance improved because they were no longer operating from a place of fear. Another person applied this to health anxiety. Instead of constantly worrying about potential illness, they spent a few minutes each week visualizing how they would respond if they faced health challenges. This counterintuitive practice didn't make them more anxious. It freed them from constant worry by creating confidence in their ability to handle whatever might come. To implement this practice systematically, consider creating a memento mori calendar. Scheduling brief negative visualizations about different aspects of your life. Perhaps Monday you consider health, Wednesday relationships, and Friday work or finances. Just 2 to 3 minutes on each topic creates the beneficial effect. The phrase memento mori, remember you must die, sounds morbid to modern ears, but the Stoics found it liberating. By remembering the temporary nature of everything, they freed themselves from taking anything for granted. As Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day." The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time. This practice isn't about dwelling on worst-case scenarios or becoming paranoid about loss. It's about right-sizing your appreciation for what you have while it's still yours to enjoy. It's also about reducing anxiety by confronting fears directly rather than trying to suppress them. One businessman I worked with was constantly stressed about potential business failure. His anxiety was actually creating the very problems he feared by leading to poor decision-making. Through regular practice of negative visualization, specifically imagining what business failure would actually look like and how he would respond, his anxiety decreased by 70% within 3 weeks. Ironically, his business began to thrive as he made decisions from clarity rather than fear. The most powerful aspect of this practice is how it transforms perfectionism and performance anxiety. Many high achievers create enormous stress through attachment to perfect outcomes. By visualizing failure or imperfection before important performances, presentations, or projects, you reduce the emotional stakes while increasing your ability to be present and effective. A performer I coached used this before auditions. Instead of trying to suppress her nervousness, which never worked, she would spend 5 minutes visualizing not getting the part. By the time she walked into the audition, she had already mentally processed potential disappointment, which freed her to perform with presence rather than desperate attachment to results. As with all Stoic practices, this works best when integrated with the habits we've already discussed. When facing uncertainty about the future, first, apply the dichotomy of control to focus only on what you can influence. Second, use your morning mental rehearsal to prepare for challenges. Third, practice obstacle reversal to find opportunity in difficulties. Fourth, use active acceptance, this is happening, to eliminate resistance. Fifth, apply negative visualization to reduce attachment anxiety and increase appreciation. This integrated approach transforms your relationship with both present challenges and future uncertainties. You're not eliminating difficulties. You're transforming how you experience them. Begin today with a simple practice. Before going to sleep, spend 2 minutes visualizing waking up without something you currently take for granted. Notice how this transforms your appreciation when you actually wake up tomorrow and still have it. Within 2 weeks of consistent practice, you'll find yourself experiencing more gratitude and less anxiety about potential losses. Remember, the goal isn't to become pessimistic or fearful, but to break the spell of taking things for granted. As Epictetus said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." Negative visualization is the direct path to this wisdom. This practice changes how you see what you already possess, but to eliminate stress completely, you also need to transform how you see yourself. The next habit is what the Stoics called living according to nature, a frequently misunderstood concept that, when properly applied, eliminates the deepest root of anxiety. This practice changes how you see what you already possess. But to eliminate stress completely, you also need to transform how you see yourself. The next habit is what the Stoics called living according to nature, a frequently misunderstood concept that, when properly applied, eliminates the deepest root of anxiety. Have you ever felt completely exhausted trying to be what everyone else expects? Perhaps you've spent years building a career that looks successful on paper, but leaves you feeling empty inside. Or maybe you find yourself constantly adjusting your opinions, preferences, and even personality depending on who you're with. This internal conflict, this gap between who you truly are and who you're pretending to be, creates a particular kind of stress that no amount of meditation or time management can solve. The Stoics identified this problem thousands of years ago. They called it living out of alignment with nature. Not nature as in trees and rivers, but your own true nature. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, defined the goal of life as living in agreement with nature, which meant living in accordance with your authentic self and core values. Think about it this way. When you try to be someone you're not, you're essentially forcing yourself to live in constant tension with reality. It's like trying to make yourself left-handed when you're naturally right-handed. You might succeed for brief periods, but the effort is exhausting and ultimately unsustainable. Let me guide you through a simple exercise to identify where you might be out of alignment with your true nature. Take a moment right now and ask yourself, where in my life am I saying yes when I really want to say no? Where am I pretending to enjoy something I actually dislike? Where am I compromising my values to please others or fit in? For most people, several examples immediately come to mind. These points of misalignment are major sources of stress that no amount of time management or relaxation techniques can solve. The only real solution is to realign your external life with your internal values. Epictetus put it bluntly, "How long will you wait to think yourself worthy of the best things?" He understood that many of us create stress by living according to external standards rather than internal truth. We chase approval, status, and social validation while neglecting what truly matters to us. The habit of living in alignment with your nature begins with a crucial first step. identifying your core values. These aren't just things you think are good or important in general, but principles that are deeply meaningful to you specifically. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of his core values. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Let me walk you through a practical 7-step process for creating what I call your personal constitution, a clear statement of your authentic nature and values that serves as your decision-making compass. First, reflect on moments when you felt most alive, fulfilled, and authentic. What were you doing? Who were you with? What made these experiences meaningful? Second, identify the underlying values these experiences reveal. Was it courage, connection, creativity, learning, service to others? Third, narrow these down to your top 3 to 5 core values, the principles that matter most to you personally. Fourth, for each value, define what it looks like in practice. For example, if growth is a core value, how specifically do you express that? Fifth, identify where your current life is aligned with these values and where it's misaligned. Sixth, commit to one specific change that would bring you into greater alignment with each value. Seventh, create a simple daily reminder of these values to keep them front of mind. This process might seem simple, but its impact is profound. One person I worked with realized they valued creativity and learning far more than the status and security their corporate job provided. This misalignment was creating constant stress that no amount of meditation or time management could address. By gradually realigning their career with their authentic values, first through side projects, then through a deliberate career transition, their stress levels decreased dramatically and their sense of fulfillment increased. The power of this alignment extends to every area of life. Think about your relationships. How many conflicts and stressful interactions result from trying to be someone you're not, or from compromising your values to please others? When you're clear about your authentic nature and values, you naturally attract compatible relationships and establish healthier boundaries in existing ones. Seneca emphasized this point. We must set our affections on some good man and keep him constantly before our eyes, so that we may live as if he were watching us and do everything as if he saw what we were doing. He wasn't suggesting we live for others' approval, but rather that we align our actions with our idealized self, the person we aspire to be at our best. This alignment creates what psychologists now call values-based psychological flexibility, the ability to stay true to your core principles while adapting to changing circumstances. This is very different from rigidity, refusing to adapt, or compliance, abandoning your values to fit in. Let me share a practical example of how this works in daily life. Imagine you value honesty and integrity, but you work in an environment where white lies and exaggeration are common practice. Most people either compromise their values, creating internal stress, or become rigidly judgmental, creating external conflict. Someone practicing values-based flexibility might say, "I notice this environment doesn't align with my value of honesty. I can either find ways to maintain my integrity within this system, influence the culture toward greater transparency, or begin planning a transition to a more aligned environment." This approach eliminates the stress of misalignment while avoiding unnecessary conflict. You're neither compromising your values nor rigidly imposing them on others. One particularly powerful application of this habit is establishing what I call value-based boundaries. Most people set boundaries based on comfort or convenience, which are easy to violate when pressured. When your boundaries are anchored in your core values, they become much stronger and clearer. For example, if someone who values family connection keeps checking work emails during dinner, they're violating their own values. A value-based boundary might be, Because I value family connection, I don't check my phone during meals. This clarity eliminates the stress of constant negotiation with yourself and others. The science behind this practice is compelling. Research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who reported living in alignment with their personal values showed significantly lower levels of stress hormones like cortisol during challenging situations. Their bodies literally processed stress differently at a biological level. Another study from the field of occupational psychology found that value congruence, the alignment between personal values and daily activities, was a stronger predictor of burnout prevention than workload, compensation, or even social support. Put simply, when what you do aligns with who you are, you can handle much greater challenges without experiencing stress. One common obstacle to implementing this habit is what I call the should syndrome, the constant voice in your head saying you should be someone different than who you actually are. These shoulds come from parents, culture, social media, and countless other external sources. They create a blueprint for your life based on others' expectations rather than your authentic nature. To overcome this, try a simple audit of your language. For 1 week, notice every time you use the word should in relation to yourself. Then ask, is this aligned with my authentic values, or is it an external expectation I've internalized? This awareness alone often creates immediate relief from the pressure to be someone you're not. Many people worry that living according to their nature means being selfish or abandoning responsibilities. The Stoics would strongly disagree. They believed that human nature at its best includes virtues like wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Living according to your nature doesn't mean indulging every impulse. It means expressing your highest self in alignment with your deepest values. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, people try to get away from it all, to the country, to the beach, to the mountains. You can get away from it right where you are by going within. He understood that true freedom comes from internal alignment rather than external circumstances. To integrate this habit with those we've already discussed, implement this 2-minute daily check-in. Each morning, after your mental rehearsal, briefly review your core values and ask, how can I express these values today, regardless of what challenges arise? This creates a value-focused lens through which you'll naturally view the day's events. One person who implemented this practice told me, "For years, I created enormous stress trying to be who I thought I should be, ambitious, outgoing, always busy. When I finally admitted that my true nature is more contemplative, creative, and connection-focused, everything changed. I redesigned my life around these values, and the constant background anxiety I'd lived with for decades simply disappeared." The Stoics recognized something profound that modern psychology confirms. Much of our stress comes from internal conflict rather than external circumstances. When we align our actions, relationships, and work with our authentic nature, we eliminate this conflict at its source. This doesn't mean your life will be free from challenges. The Stoics would never suggest such an unrealistic view. What changes is how you experience those challenges. When your actions align with your values, difficulties become meaningful rather than merely stressful. As Viktor Frankl, who was heavily influenced by Stoicism, observed, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." Begin today by identifying one area where you're living out of alignment with your authentic nature. It might be a relationship where you're pretending to be someone you're not, a job that conflicts with your values, or a commitment you've made for approval rather than authentic desire. Take one small step toward realignment, and notice how this affects your stress levels. In 1 month of consistent practice, you'll experience significantly less internal conflict and greater peace of mind. You'll make decisions more easily because you'll have clear internal guidance. And most importantly, you'll stop exhausting yourself trying to be someone you're not. Now that you know how to live aligned internally, You need the tool that the Stoics used to maintain calm when the external world became chaotic. It's a technique that Marcus Aurelius used on the battlefield that you can apply immediately when you feel like you're losing control. Now that you know how to live aligned internally, you need the tool that the Stoics used to maintain calm when the external world became chaotic. It's a technique that Marcus Aurelius used on the battlefield that you can apply immediately when you feel like you're losing control. When your mind starts racing with worries, when your thoughts spiral out of control, when your emotions threaten to overwhelm you, there's an immediate Stoic practice that can bring you back to center in less than 60 seconds. The ancient Stoics called this practice prosos, the art of focused attention. I call it present moment anchoring, and it's the seventh habit of people who never get stressed. Think about what happens during moments of acute stress. Your mind typically does one of two things. It races into the future, creating catastrophic scenarios that haven't happened yet, or it dredges up past failures and regrets. In either case, you're mentally absent from the only moment where you actually have power, right now. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. Even while commanding armies on the northern frontiers of the Roman Empire, facing barbarian invasions and plague among his troops, he reminded himself, "Do not disturb yourself by picturing your life as a whole. Rather, ask yourself what is demanded of you at this moment." He wasn't denying the bigger picture. He was recognizing that power exists only in the present moment. This practice is particularly vital in our modern world of constant digital distraction. Studies show the average person checks their phone 150 times per day and switches tasks every 3 minutes. Our attention has become fragmented, creating a perpetual low-grade stress that occasionally spikes into acute anxiety. Present moment anchoring is the antidote. Let me teach you the 60-second technique that can interrupt any stress spiral. The next time you feel your thoughts racing and anxiety building, try this. First, pause and take one deep breath, focusing completely on the sensation of the air entering and leaving your body. Second, deliberately engage your senses by naming 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Be specific. Not just, "I see a chair," but "I see a brown leather chair with a small tear on the armrest." Third, ask yourself, what is happening right now in this exact moment? Not what might happen later or what happened before, but what is actually occurring now. This simple practice activates your sensory cortex while deactivating your default mode network, the brain region responsible for rumination and worry. It literally changes which parts of your brain are processing your experience, shifting you from stress to presence. A study from the University of Michigan found that this type of sensory grounding reduces anxiety by 64% within 90 seconds during stressful situations, more effectively than many common medication-based approaches. The Stoics developed this practice not just for crisis moments, but as a regular mental discipline. Epictetus taught his students, "Remember to distinguish between events themselves and your interpretations of them. Remember that your pain comes from your own judgment of things." Present moment. Anchoring creates the mental space to make this distinction. I worked with someone who suffered from regular panic attacks that seemed to come out of nowhere. We discovered that these attacks were actually preceded by subtle thought spirals that went unnoticed until they reached crisis levels. By implementing present moment anchoring at the first hint of anxiety, before it became overwhelming, they reduced panic episodes by 80% in just 3 weeks. What makes this practice particularly powerful is that it creates an interruption in automatic stress patterns. Neuroscience shows that stress often operates through habitual neural pathways. The more you worry, the more your brain becomes efficient at worrying. By deliberately shifting your attention to present sensory experience, You're creating a pattern interrupt that weakens these stress pathways over time. You can enhance this practice by creating what I call sensory anchors in your environment. These are specific sensory experiences you can immediately access when you need to ground yourself. For example, a smooth stone in your pocket that you can touch, a specific essential oil you can smell, a particular piece of music that brings you into the present, a taste that demands your full attention, like a piece of dark chocolate. These sensory anchors become powerful tools during stressful situations, immediately bringing you back to the present moment. The difference between Stoic present moment anchoring and modern mindfulness practices is subtle but important. While mindfulness often focuses on calm observation, the Stoic approach emphasizes purposeful attention as preparation for wise action. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The present is all that they can give up, since that is all you have, and what you do not have, you cannot lose." Let's apply this to a common stressful situation, conflict with another person. When someone criticizes you or a conversation becomes heated, your mind typically races with defenses, counterattacks, or worries about the relationship. This mental acceleration creates immediate stress and prevents clear thinking. By practicing present moment anchoring, you create mental space before responding. You notice the physical sensations in your body, the actual words being spoken, not your interpretation of them, and the present reality of the situation. From this grounded state, you can respond wisely rather than react defensively. One manager I worked with transformed her team interactions using this practice. Whenever a challenging conversation began, she would discreetly touch a smooth stone in her pocket, her sensory anchor, which reminded her to ground in present experience before responding. Her team noticed the change immediately, commenting that she seemed more present and thoughtful even during heated discussions. To make this habit automatic, you need to identify your personal activation points, the specific situations, physical sensations, or thought patterns that typically trigger stress for you. Common activation points include feeling rushed or behind schedule, unexpected changes to plans, criticism or perceived judgment from others, physical sensations like a racing heart or tight chest, specific environments that trigger stress memories. Once you identify these activation points, they become your cues to practice present moment anchoring before stress takes hold. The neurological impact of this practice is remarkable. When you engage your senses fully, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system, your body's natural calming mechanism. This reduces cortisol and adrenaline while increasing alpha brainwaves associated with calm alertness. You're literally changing your brain chemistry through directed attention. You can enhance this effect by combining present moment anchoring with specific breathing patterns. The Stoics were aware of the connection between breath and mental state, though they lacked our scientific understanding of why it works. A simple pattern that complements this practice is the 4-7-8 technique. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 7 counts, exhale for 8 counts. This pattern activates your vagus nerve, creating an immediate calming effect. One of the most powerful applications of present moment anchoring is breaking the cycle of nighttime worry. When you find yourself lying awake with racing thoughts, the 60-second grounding practice can interrupt the stress spiral and create conditions for sleep. Focus intensely on the sensation of your body against the bed, the sounds in the room, and your breathing. This sensory focus displaces the abstract worries that keep sleep at bay. To truly master this habit, create what I call presence markers throughout your day. Specific moments when you practice coming fully into the present, even when you're not stressed. For example, the moment you first touch water when washing your hands, the first bite of each meal, the feeling of walking through doorways, the sensation of your feet touching the floor when you first stand up. By practicing presence during these neutral moments, you strengthen the neural pathways that make present moment anchoring automatic during stressful situations. One teacher implemented this practice with remarkable results. Teaching had become increasingly stressful, with constant demands from students, parents, and administrators creating a perpetual state of overwhelm. She began using the threshold of her classroom door as a presence marker. Each time she walked through it, she would pause for 3 seconds to anchor in her senses before engaging with students. This simple practice transformed her teaching experience, allowing her to remain centered even during chaotic moments. Remember that present moment anchoring isn't about denying problems or avoiding necessary planning. It's about ensuring that your problem solving comes from a place of clear presence rather than reactive stress. As Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Present moment anchoring allows you to fully inhabit each moment rather than losing it to stress about moments past or future. Let's integrate this with the habits we've already discussed. When facing a challenging situation, first, apply the dichotomy of control to focus only on what you can influence. Second, use your morning mental rehearsal as preparation. Third, practice obstacle reversal to find opportunity in difficulty. Fourth, use active acceptance. This is happening to eliminate resistance. Fifth, apply negative visualization to reduce attachment anxiety. Sixth, ensure your response aligns with your authentic nature and values. Seventh, use present moment anchoring to ground yourself in the here and now. This comprehensive approach transforms how you experience life's challenges at every level, from your basic perception to your highest values. Begin practicing today with the 60-second technique. The next time you feel stress beginning to build, pause and deliberately engage your senses. Notice how this simple shift creates immediate relief. With consistent practice, you'll develop the ability to remain centered regardless of external circumstances. As one client put it, "I used to be constantly hijacked by stress about what might happen next. Learning to anchor in the present moment was like discovering a superpower I didn't know I had. Now, no matter how chaotic things get, I can find that calm center instantly." This anchoring in the present is crucial for moments of crisis. But for lasting tranquility, you also need the 8th habit, something the Stoics practiced religiously, and that modern science proves to be the most powerful antidote to chronic stress. It's a practice that Seneca called self-strengthening through voluntary discomfort. This anchoring in the present is crucial for moments of crisis, but for lasting tranquility, you also need the 8th habit, something the Stoics practiced religiously and that modern science proves to be the most powerful antidote to chronic stress. It's a practice that Seneca called self-strengthening through voluntary discomfort. Have you ever wondered why the ancient Stoics would occasionally take cold baths, sleep on hard floors, or practice temporary fasting? These weren't acts of self-punishment or bizarre rituals. They were deliberate psychological training exercises designed to build mental resilience, just as lifting weights builds physical strength. Seneca, who enjoyed considerable wealth as an advisor to Emperor Nero, would regularly set aside days to practice living with minimal possessions and basic food. He wrote, "Set aside certain days on which you will withdraw from your business and make yourself at home with the scantiest fare. Establish business relations with poverty." This wasn't because he feared becoming poor, but because he was systematically building his capacity to handle discomfort. I call this practice voluntary discomfort training, and it's based on a profound psychological insight. Just as muscles grow stronger through resistance, your psychological resilience grows stronger through deliberately facing small discomforts. It's emotional weight training in its purest form. Think about how we typically respond to discomfort in modern life. We go to extraordinary lengths to avoid even minor inconveniences. Our homes maintain perfect temperatures. We become irritated when websites take more than seconds to load. We abandon activities at the first sign of boredom. This constant comfort-seeking actually weakens our ability to handle real challenges when they inevitably arise. The Stoics recognized this danger 2,000 years ago. Epictetus, who began life as a slave with a permanent disability, taught, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." He understood that deliberately embracing small hardships builds the mental strength needed for life's unavoidable challenges. Let me show you how to implement this practice in your modern life. You don't need to sleep on the floor, though you certainly could. Instead, start with these accessible forms of voluntary discomfort. Take a 30-second cold shower at the end of your normal shower. Notice your initial resistance and how quickly your body adapts. Skip a meal occasionally, not for dietary reasons, but to experience hunger and recognize that it's manageable rather than emergency. Walk up several flights of stairs instead of taking the elevator, even when you're tired. Have that difficult conversation you've been avoiding for weeks. Turn off all notifications on your phone for 2 hours each day. Each of these small discomforts builds your capacity to handle larger stressors without becoming overwhelmed. It's like psychological immunization, small, controlled doses that build resistance. One business executive I worked with began taking cold showers for 30 seconds each morning. He reported that within just 2 weeks, he noticed client criticisms that once triggered hours of stress now barely registered emotionally. His brain had literally been trained to respond differently to discomfort. The science behind this practice is compelling. Research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who regularly engage in voluntary discomfort show significantly higher levels of distress tolerance, the ability to withstand challenging emotions without being overwhelmed by them. This capacity directly translates to lower stress levels during genuinely difficult situations. What makes this practice particularly powerful is that it breaks the unconscious link between discomfort and suffering. Most of us automatically equate feeling uncomfortable with something being wrong. Through voluntary discomfort training, you discover that you can be uncomfortable without being unhappy, a distinction that transforms your relationship with stress. Marcus Aurelius practiced this regularly, writing, "Do not indulge in dreams of having what you have not, but reckon up the chief of the blessings you do possess, and then thankfully remember how you would crave for them if they were not yours." He deliberately practiced gratitude by temporarily going without comforts he normally enjoyed. Let's create a practical framework for implementing this habit. I recommend building what I call a discomfort ladder, a progression of challenges that gradually increase in intensity as your resilience grows. Level 1. Physical discomforts that last less than 1 minute. Cold water, holding an uncomfortable position, eating something bland. Level 2. Extended physical discomforts. Longer cold exposure, fasting for 1 meal, sleeping without a pillow for 1 night. Level 3. Social discomforts. Initiating conversation with strangers, speaking up in meetings, asking for something you might be denied. Level 4. Lifestyle discomforts. A day without complaining, a weekend without internet, taking a different route to work even when it's longer. Level 5. Identity discomforts. Trying activities you believe you're not good at, expressing unpopular opinions when appropriate, acknowledging mistakes publicly. The key is to start small and build gradually. Choose one discomfort from level 1 and practice it daily for a week. Notice how your relationship with that discomfort changes. Then move to something slightly more challenging. A woman I worked with was terrified of social rejection. She began her voluntary discomfort practice by simply making eye contact with strangers, something that initially triggered anxiety. After 2 weeks, she progressed to initiating brief conversations. Within 2 months, she was comfortable expressing opposing viewpoints in meetings, something that previously would have caused days of stress. It's important to understand the difference between productive discomfort and pointless suffering. Voluntary discomfort is chosen deliberately, has a clear purpose, and includes reflection afterward. You're not just suffering randomly. You're strategically building specific mental capacities. After each practice, ask yourself, what did I discover about my capacity to handle discomfort? What stories or fears arose? How quickly did my initial resistance fade? This reflection transforms the experience from mere endurance to genuine growth. Some people worry that this practice will make them less happy or comfortable in life. The research shows exactly the opposite. People who regularly practice voluntary discomfort report higher levels of overall life satisfaction and lower baseline anxiety. By breaking the unconscious addiction to comfort, they actually enjoy comfortable moments more fully when they occur. One particularly powerful application of this practice is in breaking the habit of avoidance. Many of us create enormous stress by postponing difficult conversations, decisions, or tasks. We think we're reducing stress by avoiding discomfort, but we're actually prolonging and intensifying it. Try this. Identify one uncomfortable task or conversation you've been avoiding. Commit to addressing it within 24 hours, not despite the discomfort, but because of it, as an opportunity to build your resilience. Notice how the anticipatory anxiety is typically far worse than the actual experience. A manager I coached had been avoiding giving necessary feedback to a team member for months. The situation deteriorated while his stress increased daily. When he finally had the conversation as a voluntary discomfort exercise, he discovered it took less than 10 minutes and resulted in positive changes. His avoidance had created far more suffering than the discomfort itself. The Stoics recognized another benefit of voluntary discomfort. It eliminates the fear of future hardship. Seneca wrote, "What fortune has made yours is not your own." By regularly practicing doing without comforts and conveniences, the Stoics liberated themselves from the fear of losing them. This connects directly to the negative visualization we discussed earlier. When you've actually experienced the discomforts you fear, rather than just imagining them, they lose much of their power over you. You develop what psychologists call experiential confidence, the knowledge based on experience that you can handle challenges. You can integrate voluntary discomfort training with other Stoic practices we've discussed. For example, when practicing a physical discomfort like cold exposure, simultaneously apply present moment anchoring by focusing intensely on the sensations rather than your judgments about them. Or while engaging in social discomfort, practice the dichotomy of control by focusing only on your actions rather than others' responses. A powerful way to build this habit is by creating a discomfort diary where you track your practices and insights. Each entry should include the discomfort you chose, your initial resistance level, 1 to 10, how that resistance changed during the experience, and what you learned. This documentation accelerates your growth by making patterns visible. One particularly valuable form of voluntary discomfort in our digital age is what I call input fasting. Deliberately going without information inputs that normally flood your attention. Try going 24 hours without news, social media, or entertainment content. This practice builds your capacity to be present with your own thoughts, rather than constantly seeking distraction, a crucial skill for stress reduction. A tech executive I worked with committed to spending his commute without podcasts, music, or phone calls, just being present with his thoughts. After 3 weeks, he reported, "I discovered my mind was constantly seeking distraction to avoid uncomfortable emotions I wasn't even aware of. Now that I can sit with these feelings, they process naturally instead of creating background stress." What makes voluntary discomfort training so transformative is that it changes your relationship with discomfort at the most fundamental level. Most stress management techniques try to eliminate discomfort. This practice teaches you to engage with discomfort productively, transforming it from enemy to teacher. I encourage you to start today with one small, manageable discomfort. Perhaps take a 30-second cold shower, or go for a walk without your phone, or eat a meal without any distractions. Notice your initial resistance, how quickly it changes, and what you discover about your capacity. Within 30 days of consistent practice, situations that used to trigger stress will begin to seem trivial. As Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Voluntary discomfort. Training is about becoming someone who can handle challenges with equanimity rather than stress, not through theory, but through direct experience. The discomfort you choose builds your resistance to the discomforts life inevitably brings. In the process, you discover a profound truth the Stoics understood. Resilience isn't about avoiding difficulties. It's about engaging with them in ways that make you stronger. This practice strengthens your resistance, but to completely eliminate stress from human interactions, you need the ninth habit, something Epictetus considered the key to serene relationships. It's a simple technique that completely transforms how you view other people's actions. This practice strengthens your resistance, but to completely eliminate stress from human interactions, you need the ninth habit, something Epictetus considered the key to serene relationships. It's a simple technique that completely transforms how you view other people's actions. People often cause us more stress than any other aspect of life. Have you noticed that? The driver who cuts you off in traffic, the colleague who misses a deadline affecting your work, the family member who makes that comment they know will upset you. In these moments, it's rarely the event itself that creates stress, but rather what we think about the event. Epictetus captured this perfectly when he said, "It's not the things themselves that disturb people, but their judgments about those things." This insight forms the foundation of what I call the judgment suspension habit, the practice of separating objective events from your subjective interpretations of them. Think about the last time someone did something that upset you. Perhaps they were late for a meeting, ignored your message, or criticized your work. What actually created your stress wasn't their behavior, but the story you immediately attached to it. They don't respect my time. They're ignoring me deliberately. They think I'm incompetent. The judgment suspension habit involves a crucial first step, distinguishing between what actually happened, observable fact, and your interpretation of what happened, subjective story. These are two entirely different things, yet our minds blend them so seamlessly that we don't notice the difference. Let me show you how this works with a simple exercise. Think of a recent situation where someone's behavior stressed you out. Now, on a mental sheet of paper, draw a line down the middle. On the left side, write only the observable facts that a security camera would record. On the right, write the interpretations, meanings, and stories your mind created about those facts. For example, left side. My colleague didn't respond to my email for 24 hours. Right side. They're ignoring me. They don't think my project is important. They're unprofessional. See the difference? The stress comes entirely from the right column, your interpretations, not from the left column of facts. Marcus Aurelius practiced this distinction rigorously. He wrote, "When you are offended at anyone's fault, turn to yourself and reflect in what manner you yourself have erred. For example, in thinking that money is good, or pleasure, or reputation, and the like." He recognized that our judgments about others' actions reveal more about our own values and expectations than about the other person. The power of this practice comes from the space it creates between observation and reaction. When you catch yourself making automatic judgments, you can pause and ask, is this interpretation necessarily true? What other explanations might there be for this behavior? Let me guide you through identifying your most common automatic judgments. those interpretations your mind makes so quickly you barely notice them. Common examples include, "They're doing this deliberately to upset me. They don't care about me or my needs. They think they're better than me. They're incompetent or lazy. They should know better." Take a moment to identify which automatic judgments frequently arise in your own thinking. Just becoming aware of these patterns reduces their power over you. Now, let's apply the judgment suspension habit to relationships, where it has transformative effects. When someone's behavior triggers irritation, instead of reacting to your interpretation, try shifting into curiosity. Ask yourself, "I'm feeling irritated based on my interpretation. What if I temporarily suspend judgment and become curious instead?" For example, when your partner leaves dishes in the sink again, your automatic judgment might be, "They're lazy and expect me to clean up after them." Suspending judgment, you might wonder, "I noticed they left dishes in the sink. I'm curious about what was happening for them today. Perhaps they were rushing to help the kids with homework or dealing with a work crisis." This shift from irritation to curiosity completely transforms the emotional quality of the interaction. You might still request that they handle the dishes differently, but you'll do so from a place of understanding rather than judgment. Epictetus advised, "Remember that it is we who torment, we who make difficulties for ourselves. That is, our opinions do. What, for instance, does it mean to be insulted? Stand by a rock and insult it, and what have you accomplished? If someone responds to insult like a rock, what has the insulter gained with his insult?" This applies powerfully to receiving feedback at work or in creative pursuits. When someone criticizes your project or performance, the automatic judgment might be, "They think I'm incompetent," or "They're trying to undermine me." These interpretations create immediate stress and defensiveness. Someone practicing judgment suspension instead thinks, "They've offered specific feedback about this aspect of my work. This is data I can evaluate, not a statement about my worth or abilities." This creates the mental space to receive potentially valuable input without the stress of perceived attack. A practice that strengthens this habit is what Marcus Aurelius called multiple perspectives, the deliberate effort to see situations from different viewpoints. When someone's behavior triggers a negative judgment, try imagining at least 3 different interpretations of their actions, especially ones that assume good or neutral intentions. For example, if someone doesn't acknowledge you in a meeting, you might automatically think they're disrespecting you. Alternative interpretations could be, "They're preoccupied with something challenging in their personal life. They didn't notice you because they were focused on their presentation. They're uncomfortable in group settings and struggling with their own social anxiety." Marcus Aurelius regularly practiced this perspective-taking writing. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, "The people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." This wasn't pessimism, but preparation. Recognizing that people act according to their own nature and circumstances, not according to our expectations. The power of questions is central to this habit. When you feel judgment arising, try replacing it with genuine questions. What might be happening in their life that I don't see? What needs or concerns might be driving this behavior? How might this look from their perspective? Questions open mental pathways that judgments close. I challenge you to practice not knowing for the next 7 days. When you feel certain about why someone did something that bothers you, deliberately think, "I actually don't know for sure why they did that." This simple acknowledgement of uncertainty creates immediate relief from the stress of judgment. The science behind this practice is compelling. Research in neuroscience shows that judgment and curiosity activate entirely different neural networks. When you judge, your sympathetic nervous system activates, increasing stress hormones and inflammatory markers. When you become curious, your brain shifts into a learning mode, associated with reduced inflammation and stress. Studies published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people trained in judgment suspension showed measurably lower cardiovascular stress responses during challenging interpersonal interactions compared to control groups. Their bodies literally processed potentially stressful encounters differently. One particular story illustrates the transformative power of this practice. A manager was constantly stressed by interactions with a team member who frequently missed deadlines. His automatic judgment was, "They're lazy and incompetent." When he practiced suspending judgment and became curious instead, he discovered the team member was struggling with learning disabilities they had been afraid to disclose. This new understanding led to accommodations that improved both performance and their working relationship. Another person transformed a difficult family relationship by practicing judgment suspension. After years of interpreting her mother's questions as criticism and control, creating constant stress during interactions, she deliberately suspended these judgments and became curious about her mother's intentions. She discovered her mother's questions actually came from genuine interest and concern, just expressed in a way that triggered old patterns. Their relationship transformed from a source of stress to one of support. To integrate this habit with ones we've already discussed, try this sequence when someone's behavior triggers stress. First, apply the dichotomy of control, focusing only on your response rather than their behavior. Second, use present moment anchoring to ground yourself before reacting. Third, practice judgment suspension by separating fact from interpretation. Fourth, become curious rather than critical about possible explanations. This integrated approach transforms how you experience even the most challenging interpersonal interactions. You're not denying the impact of others' behavior. You're changing how you process and respond to it. Begin today by noticing one judgment you make about someone else's behavior. Pause and ask yourself, is this interpretation necessarily true? What other explanations might there be? Notice how this simple question creates immediate space and reduces stress. With consistent practice over 3 weeks, you'll find yourself automatically pausing between observation and judgment. Your relationships will become less reactive and more responsive. Interactions that once created hours of stress will be met with calm curiosity. As Epictetus taught, when someone seems to have injured you, remember that they have actually injured their own peace of mind. With the judgment suspension habit, you protect your own peace regardless of others' actions. This suspension of judgment transforms how you respond to others, but for complete serenity, you need the 10th habit, a practice that Marcus Aurelius considered essential for maintaining perspective in any situation. It's something he called the view from above that instantly resizes any problem to its true proportion. This suspension of judgment transforms how you respond to others. But for complete serenity, you need the 10th habit, a practice that Marcus Aurelius considered essential for maintaining perspective in any situation. It's something he called the view from above that instantly resizes any problem to its true proportion. When a problem feels overwhelming, when anxiety is mounting, when everything seems impossibly important and urgent, that's precisely when you need what I call the cosmic perspective habit. This practice allows you to mentally step back and see your current situation from increasingly wider viewpoints, instantly transforming how you experience even the most pressing challenges. Imagine you're stressed about an upcoming presentation at work. Your mind is racing with all the things that could go wrong, the judgment you might face, how this could affect your career. In this moment, try this. Close your eyes and imagine slowly rising up, seeing yourself from 10 feet above, now from 100 feet, from 1,000 feet. See your building, your neighborhood, your city growing smaller. Continue rising until you see the entire planet, a beautiful blue sphere. From this vantage point, consider your presentation again. Does it still feel overwhelming? Or has something shifted in your perception? Marcus Aurelius practiced this perspective-taking regularly. During military campaigns on the empire's frontiers, facing life-or-death decisions daily, he would write, "Think of the whole universe of matter and how small your share. Think about the expanse of time and how brief, almost momentary, the part marked for you. Think of the workings of fate and how infinitesimal your role." This wasn't to minimize his responsibilities, but to place them in their proper context. The power of this practice comes from activating what neuroscientists call psychological distance, the ability to step back from immediate experience and see it within larger contexts. Research from Columbia University shows that this mental zooming out activates your prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thinking, while quieting your amygdala, your brain's alarm system. You literally process the same situation through different neural pathways. Let me guide you through the three-circle perspective exercise that you can use whenever something feels overwhelmingly important or stressful. First, acknowledge your immediate perspective, how the situation looks and feels right now, from the inside. Second, expand to your life perspective. How significant will this seem in the context of your entire life? How will you view this 1 month from now? 1 year? 5 years? Third, expand to the cosmic perspective. How significant is this in the context of human history, in the vastness of the universe? Try this right now with something that's currently causing you stress. Take a moment to move through each circle of perspective. Notice how your emotional response shifts as your perspective widens. This isn't about dismissing legitimate concerns or responsibilities. It's about accurately sizing them. As Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." The cosmic perspective helps you distinguish between what merely seems enormous and what truly is. A client who was devastated after losing a major business opportunity practiced this technique. From his immediate perspective, it was catastrophic, representing months of work and significant potential income. From his life perspective, he recognized it as one of many opportunities that would come his way over decades of business. From the cosmic perspective, he saw it as an infinitesimal event in the grand scheme of existence. This didn't erase his disappointment, but it transformed crushing anxiety into manageable disappointment, a completely different emotional experience. One particularly powerful application of this habit is the timescale shifting technique. When facing a stressful situation, explicitly ask yourself, "How will I feel about this 1 week from now? How will I feel about this 1 year from now? How will I feel about this 5 years from now?" This simple sequence creates immediate perspective. Most things that seem catastrophic in the moment look very different when viewed through the lens of time. I've never met anyone who, looking back 5 years, found that most of their worries actually mattered. Epictetus taught this principle through a powerful question: "Is this within my control or not?" But he added an often overlooked dimension: "And is it important or not?" Many things within our control still don't deserve the emotional energy we give them. The cosmic perspective helps you accurately assess importance. For example, someone criticized your work. From the immediate perspective, this might feel like a major attack on your competence and identity. From a life perspective, it's one piece of feedback among thousands you'll receive over your career. From a cosmic perspective, it's a momentary interaction between two humans on a tiny planet, hardly worth the emotional suffering we often attach to it. Another application that transforms everyday stress is what I call ancestor perspective. When facing a modern frustration, slow internet, traffic jams, a delayed flight, ask yourself, How would my ancestors from 300 years ago view this problem? Suddenly, sitting in a climate-controlled vehicle while temporarily delayed seems less like suffering and more like a miracle of modern convenience. The Stoics practiced this perspective shifting not just during crises, but as regular mental exercise. Seneca wrote, "Let us get used to dining out without the crowds, to being slaves to fewer slaves, to getting clothes only for their real purpose, and to living in more modest quarters." He was training his mind to see all advantages as temporary and optional, not as necessities whose loss would be unbearable. You can strengthen this habit by incorporating specific visualization triggers into your environment. For example, keeping a small stone on your desk can remind you of geological timescales, that rock has existed for millions of years and will continue long after your current problems are forgotten. Looking at the night sky performs a similar function, instantly triggering cosmic perspective. One powerful practice is creating what I call perspective bookends to your day. When you wake up, take 30 seconds to visualize the Earth from space, seeing yourself as part of something vastly larger than your individual concerns. Before sleep, repeat this visualization. These bookends prime your mind to maintain broader perspective throughout the day. A doctor I worked with transformed her relationship with workplace stress through this practice. Working in emergency medicine, she faced genuinely life-or-death situations daily. By regularly shifting to broader time and space perspectives, she maintained the focus needed for excellent care while avoiding the emotional burnout that affects many in her field. She described it as caring completely without being completely consumed. What makes this practice particularly valuable is how it changes your relationship with failure and setbacks. From the immediate perspective, a failure can seem devastating. From the life perspective, it becomes a chapter in your story. From the cosmic perspective, it's revealed as a necessary part of any meaningful human journey. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Does the light of a lamp shine and keep its glow until its fuel is spent? And should the truth and justice and self-control that are in you be extinguished before your death?" He was reminding himself that temporary setbacks don't define us. Our response to them does. An important distinction. Cosmic perspective differs from detachment or dissociation. You're not emotionally checking out from your life. You're engaging with it more wisely by seeing it more completely. It's about appropriate sizing of concerns, not dismissing them entirely. The science behind this practice reveals why it works so effectively. Neuroimaging studies show that perspective-shifting exercises activate the brain's default mode network in a structured way, allowing for greater integration between emotional and rational brain regions. You're literally creating a more balanced neural processing of potentially stressful events. Let's integrate this habit with others we've discussed when facing a challenging situation. First, apply the dichotomy of control to focus only on what you can influence. Second, use present moment anchoring to ground yourself. Third, practice judgment suspension by separating fact from interpretation. Fourth, apply the cosmic perspective to properly size the situation. One person transformed their anxiety about public speaking through this integrated approach. Rather than focusing on all the judgments that might come outside her control, she anchored in the present moment, suspended assumptions about what others were thinking, and viewed the presentation from a broader life perspective. In 5 years, will I remember this talk? Or will I remember the growth that came from doing something challenging? Her anxiety didn't disappear, but it reduced to a manageable level that allowed her to perform effectively. Nature provides endless opportunities to practice this perspective. When you're outdoors, notice how ancient trees, flowing water, or vast skies naturally evoke a sense of your place within something larger. The Stoics frequently used nature as a teacher of perspective, reminding themselves that human concerns exist within, not separate from, natural processes and cycles. Begin implementing this habit today by identifying your personal perspective triggers. Specific situations where you tend to lose proportion and make things bigger than they are. Common examples include criticism from others, mistakes or failures, financial concerns, or health worries. When these arise, consciously practice expanding your perspective through the 3 circles we discussed. One man transformed his relationship with financial stress through this practice. When bills or expenses triggered anxiety, he would deliberately shift perspectives. Yes, this is challenging now, but in the timeline of my life, financial circumstances have always changed. From a cosmic perspective, humans have faced resource challenges throughout history, and I have far more than most who have ever lived. This didn't solve the practical financial challenges, but it eliminated the additional suffering caused by catastrophizing. Remember that the goal isn't to dismiss legitimate concerns, but to see them clearly. As Epictetus taught, make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. The cosmic perspective helps you distinguish between genuine emergencies and routine challenges that only feel emergency-sized because of limited perspective. With consistent practice over 30 days, you'll notice yourself automatically asking, how important is this really? When faced with potentially stressful situations, your baseline anxiety will decrease as you develop the habit of proper proportion. This perspective shifts how you view current problems, but for a truly unshakable foundation, you need the 11th habit, a practice that connects your daily actions to deeper meaning, ensuring that even difficulties feel purposeful rather than merely stressful. It's an approach that Epictetus considered essential for unbroken tranquility in a chaotic world.